Thank you very much, Mr. Booth, for your time here on Newslink. Now, I just want to understand, does it always happen that a person who is a police officer, obviously he's applying for the police to pay for his legal fees because he's being tried as a police officer, right? But is it always something that the police would do under a new government for cases and atrocities that happened during apartheid?
Good morning. It's not automatic. Obviously, he's being tried as a police officer because he was in the security police at the time that the incident took place. And the allegation was that he was involved with the detonation of a bomb, which was involved in this particular incident. So he's applied to the police for state funding. And the order from the High Court in Johannesburg has been that the Commissioner of Police in Gauteng has to, by, I think it's during the course of this week, before he appears, to have made a decision as to his application, to process it and to, in fact, come to court to explain to the court as to the decision that is made with regard to the funding by the state. So there's been quite a bit of delay with regard to the issue of state funding. Obviously, he's entitled to apply for that, but it isn't automatic that he will get it. For example, if you look at other cases where people have applied for state funding, Richard Mduli applied for state funding, that was refused. The former crime intelligence head, Zuma, did get state funding, but that has been reversed now, and he's been ordered by court to repay the money. So one has to see what the decision is by the police. And obviously, Roerich, if he's not satisfied with the decision, in other words, if they refuse state funding, he could take that on review. And he could, in fact, even bring an application in the High Court dealing just with the issue of state funding. So, going ahead, there could be quite a significant delay here before this matter actually starts, the actual trial starts.
And that's what I was about to ask you, Mr. Booth, that isn't this one of those delaying tactics? Because you know how the law works. He first has to apply, the police have to give reason. If the court feels that the reason is valid, then they rule on that. But if they don't, then what happens? Will the court usually, in cases like this, then make the state pay because of the interest of justice?
Well, look, in terms of our constitution, everybody is entitled to legal representation. But one mustn't forget that the Legal Aid Board, Legal Aid South Africa, are also there to assist people, but that's usually with regard to indigent accused. So I'm not sure what Roerich's status is in respect of his finances, whether he can or can't pay, what financially his position is. But there seems to have been some considerable delay as far as the police are concerned. So these matters should rather be decided quickly. In other words, the police must consider Roerich's application. They must then give their ruling on that, and they must give their reasons. And if Roerich is unhappy with that, then he's got to follow the further process. So there's got to be a timeline. So because of the delay, the judge has now ordered, in terms of a High Court order, that this decision be made during the course of the upcoming week, and that, in fact, the commissioner appear at court with regard to this whole aspect. So there is a court order. The police must comply with that. Processing, they've got to make their decision, let's say, in the course of this upcoming week.
I did see that there is a court order asking a certain police officer, a Major General Colin Hendricks, to appear before the court sometime this week at around 9:30. So how does that work then? Does the police officer just get to court and then explain that this is our decision and this is why, and that's where it ends? What would be the way forward after that?
Well, look, the police should have made their decision already, but the order was granted, I think, because there's been so much delay. Clearly, the judge is, saying, well, let's move on. We want to get to the trial. So let's sort out all these preliminary aspects, including the financial situation. So, look, they could make their decision before the next court appearance this coming week. And if not, the person you refer to, who I believe is the Gauteng Commissioner of Police, would come to court and explain they're still busy with it, why they're taking so long, or they have now made a decision and what the reasons are. Then Roerich will have to make his decision if they say they're not giving financial assistance. Obviously, if they agree to financial assistance for his legal expenses, then the trial can start very quickly. But they might say, look, it's to do with apartheid crimes. We are not going to be, the country's moved on. It's in a democracy now with the constitution. That is now the police, are not prepared to condone this kind of action. It's contrary to our whole approach to policing, and therefore we are not going to give the financial assistance. So he might then end up, as I said earlier, having to go to court to deal just with this financial aspect of his legal assistance in court. So, and if he's got enough money, then he can pay himself. But, court cases like this are very expensive. They take sometimes years to finalize, and they might involve, let's say, other witnesses or even forensic evidence. So, it's a very costly affair for any person to go to court. That's why there's Legal Aid South Africa. But, as I said also earlier, that's to do with indigent people who literally unemployed or their income is very low, for them to get assistance. But that is assistance from the Legal Aid South Africa, although they can in turn appoint a private lawyer to represent somebody. But they might turn down his application, and then it goes on and on and on. So he may very well have to end up in court to get the court to make a ruling. Is he or isn't he entitled to state funding?
And that's going to be quite interesting if he does make the case go on and on, because that also means paying a lawyer, right, in terms of trying to get the state to pay. But just my last question to you, Mr. Booth, before I let you go. Is it usual, basically, for people who are tried from recommendations made, for instance, after the TRC Commission, for people to go on trial? Is it normal for those people to apply for state funding in the organizations or state bodies that they worked for during apartheid today?
Well, I think, obviously, if they are being charged as fulfilling their role as, let's say, a police officer during that time. So obviously, Roerich was under some form of instruction. He didn't go and do this on his own. So, for example, if a police officer has a fight with his partner and assaults and kills his part, either male or female, whatever, that's not done in the course and scope of his duty. But what Roerich would say here, this was done on instructions from his superiors in the security police. That's what he did, and that's why he did it. So that is why he is applying for state funding. So if a police officer commits a crime that's not in the course and scope of his employment, well, then it's another thing. I mean, I've dealt with certain matters where police, for example, while patrolling in certain areas have been shot at by gangsters. They then reply and they shoot and they kill the person. They then are criminally charged. And the state then would say, well, hang on, this guy was actually defending himself. He is fully justified in getting state funding.
All right. Thank you very much for your time
but that's not
on
the case
Newslink.
here, maybe.
Yeah, definitely not the case here. And the police, like you said earlier, would probably say this is not within the armpits of the law, and it was not something that we would condone as the SAPS. But thank you very much for your time, William Booth, a criminal law expert from William Booth, Inc.